What's up guys, it's Marcus here. Now with Christmas just around the corner, it's usually that time of the year where you start to feel the holiday spirit, which usually involves a lot of gift giving, which obviously means a lot of spending.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Grinch.
So today I'm going over a payment method that's been around for a while, but has really started to take off in the last couple of years, especially with the rise of e-commerce business and with the pandemic pushing everyone towards shopping online. This particular way of paying for your goods has really started to skyrocket.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
And that's the buy now, pay later business model. For those of you who don't know, buy now, pay later is just another way to pay for your items, but instead of paying the full lump sum that's due at checkout, it's actually split between either four to six equal payments depending on the service that you're using. So when you go to buy, say, a $100 pair of shoes, instead of paying that $100 straight up, you actually get to pay that in $25 installments. In this video, I'll quickly touch on how these companies make money, how they work. I'll go over some of the cons, some of the things you really need to look out for if you're gonna be using the buy now, pay later payment method this holiday season. And then stick around for the end of the video because I'll give you some tips on how best to use these payment platforms to avoid financial dramas. So how does a company like Afterpay make money? Simply put, they actually make their money off the merchants rather than the individual consumers that's buying the goods, you and I. They use a business model that's actually been around for quite some time, and that's called factoring of accounts receivables. This is when a company sells its accounts receivables, which is money that is owed to the company for goods or services that's already been delivered but hasn't been paid yet. They usually sell their accounts receivables to a lender, and that's typically at a discount. So in the case of Afterpay, say you go ahead and buy a pair of shoes, a $100 pair of shoes from your favorite local store, and you use Afterpay to pay for it. What actually then happens is that store will take that $100 sale and they will sell it to Afterpay for $96. So Afterpay will give the store $96, and in return, Afterpay will make that $4 profit once you've paid off all of the installments.
Ka-ching.
You can think of that $4 profit that Afterpay makes as essentially the interest that they charge for using their services. Now that $4 profit is equivalent of around a 4% interest rate. Now at first glance, that doesn't seem like a whole lot for the merchants to actually pay, but when you stop and think and when you consider that the average retailer makes around a 3.2% margin on their products, you can really see how that interest rate tends to bite into their margins or really takes away from their profitability. So that's also something you should keep in mind if you're trying to support your local store and you're thinking about using Afterpay. It would probably benefit them, or they make a little bit more money if you actually choose to pay for the products up front rather than using a buy now, pay later service. So you do have to wonder, if it does bite into their profitability, then why do these stores use Afterpay or these services like Afterpay? Well, for one, it eliminates the risk of the customer defaulting on them because Afterpay has already paid that lump sum up front, and now the risk of default actually falls on Afterpay because they're the ones that have to collect the installments from you, the customer.
Time to pay up, Cap.
Number two, it increases the conversion rate because customers actually tend to buy a bit more when they actually go to checkout and they see they have the option to pay in installments rather than pay the whole lump sum up front. As well as that, merchants have reported that they have experienced increased average order value because customers tend to think it's a little bit cheaper because they don't see the full price. They're only looking at the number that they're paying at that exact time and date. Number three, because the merchants receive the payment upfront from Afterpay, they can actually then use that money to strengthen their balance sheet or use it to pay off employees or buy ingredients or raw materials to produce more products. But that's a quick backstory on how Afterpay works and how it benefits the merchants. But let's get down to the real reason why you're here, and that's how does this affect you? So what are the dangers to you if you're going to use Afterpay for your Christmas shopping? Number one, it easily encourages overspending. Sometimes when you're shopping online, you're adding things to your cart and then you go to checkout and then you get that little shock, initially when you see that the amount that you need to pay is a lot more than you expected, and all those little things that you threw into your cart actually added up to quite a bit. Now that initial shock, sometimes it's enough to make people really reconsider what they're buying. I know it's happened to me a couple of times, and I've gone to pay for my online shopping. I get to that checkout and I see that it's about $60, $70, a little bit more than what I was intending to spend. And then two things happen. One, I'll either just really start to reconsider, do I really need those extra pair of pants, or do I really need those pair of socks? And I might remove some things from my cart. Or two, sometimes it's actually been enough to keep me from buying altogether, just because that initial shock is enough to actually make me reconsider. And sometimes I'll actually sleep on it for 24 hours before deciding whether I do need to make that purchase. But with Afterpay there, it really makes justifying that purchase a lot easier because instead of seeing the whole $100 that's due at that point, what you'll actually see see is just the first installment. So instead of $100, it's going to be $25, and it's going to be very, very easy for you to actually make that justification and go ahead with the purchase. It's going to make it really easy for you to justify the affordability of that purchase because all you're seeing is $25 instead of the $100. So instantly your brain just says, this is actually a lot cheaper and is a lot more affordable.
Oh, you can afford it.
The problem is you make that justification 3 to 4 different times, and all of a sudden, instead of paying $25 every fortnight, now you've got 4 different payments of $25 coming out every fortnight, and now that's $100 out of your budget, every single week or every fortnight, depending on the service that you're using. Now, most people already struggle to budget for the month ahead, let alone for 6 weeks ahead. So you can really see how it can get out of hand, and you can really start to overspend when you keep using these payment methods. The next thing to keep in mind is that although most people don't actually view this as such, but this is actually still a form of debt. Most people will not view this in the same way that they would when they're using a credit card, and because of that, it doesn't actually feel like you're in any debt.
369 Park to 900 million in debt.
Which really makes it easier for you to splash on things that you want and not necessarily need. A survey held by Consumer NZ showed that 55% of respondents actually responded that they bought a whole bunch of stuff that they didn't actually need, and that was just because they had easy access to credit. But the reality is, this is still money that you're going to have to pay back, and failing to do so could really put you in a hole really fast.
A hole 3 acres wide and 200 feet deep.
So when using this, treat it as you would any other debt. Put in the same amount of time and thought and consideration into it before deciding to go ahead with it. Which is going to lead me to my next point, and that's that these buy now, pay later services do not help you with your credit score. Now, unlike a credit card, whereby if you pay the balance in full and on time, the bank, will report that to the credit bureau, and that will help build your credit score. With the buy now, pay later services, most of them, unless they specify otherwise, don't actually report to a credit bureau, so they don't let them know that you've been a good Samaritan and making your payments on time. However, it can hurt your credit score. And what I mean by that is, if you do, for whatever reason, tend to miss a payment or start making late payments, that's when they actually report you. They can actually pass you off to debt collectors, which could really hurt your credit score. So be careful when it comes to, ensuring that you make your payments on time, because while it doesn't have the upside that a paying off your credit card would, but it does still have the same downside in the sense that it will hurt your credit score if you miss payments, and if you default on them, they're gonna send the debt collectors after you.
The remaining games will be held as scheduled.
Speaking of late payments, that actually brings me to the last point and the last thing that you really need to look out for when using Afterpay, and that's going to be the late charges or the late fees that they will charge you if you miss a payment or if you're late on their payment. So Afterpay charge a $10 fee for missed payments and a further $7 if you're still late the following 7 days. Now, for orders that are $40 and above, they can charge a fee that's capped at 25% of the original order value, or $68. Now you might be wondering, who's gonna miss a payment that's $15 or $20 a fortnight? Well, in their latest financial results, Afterpay actually reported they made $87 million from late fees. That's up 27% from $68.8 million from the previous year. And that's also 10% of their total revenue. Also, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission found that 1 in every 5 people who use buy now, pay later actually miss payments. And when you consider that Afterpay alone has 16.2 million active users, that number suddenly seems a lot more substantial. And with all that being said, buy now, pay later is still going to be a thing this holiday season, and most of us are still going to use buy now, pay later to pay for a lot of these gifts. So what can you do to minimize your risk, or what are some best practices that you can do when it comes to using Afterpay? Number 1, budget out just how much you can afford in payments over the next 2 months, just so that you know how much you can actually handle. Number 2 is keep track of all the payment plans that you have open. Some people have multiple payment plans with the same provider. Some people have multiple accounts with, Afterpay with Zip, and they have multiple purchases on those accounts. Doing it this way and just leaving it as it is a surefire way to overspend. And the worst thing that you can do is you go to your bank account one day and there's $50 that's missing from a payment that you weren't expecting. You can either mark payments down on your calendar, set reminders on your phone. A really good provider will usually send you an email or a text just reminding you of the upcoming payments, but it's always good to have your own spreadsheet or your own way of tracking these, just to make sure that you're on top of everything that you might owe. Number 3 is pay off any payments that's due that fortnight as soon as you get paid. So as soon as your paycheck lands into your accounts, put aside some money for savings, and then go onto the Afterpay app and make an advance payment. That way, the money's not going to be sitting there and tempting you to spend it on something else before the actual payment date is due. Number 4 is to link your buy now pay later accounts to a debit card and not a credit card. The worst thing you want to do is to pay off debt with more expensive debt.
Credit card debt. Credit card debt.
And number 5, create rules when it comes to using Afterpay or any buy now pay later service. For example, you only use buy now pay later on things that you really absolutely need. Or another example is before you make any purchase with a buy now pay later account, you actually have to step away for 24 hours and sleep on it, and then come back and decide whether that was just an impulse buy or if this is something that you really need. Giving yourself 24 hours will give that impulse buy urge a little bit of time to subside and get you thinking with a clearer head on whether you really need to buy those latest pair of shoes or those fancy pair of earrings. But guys, that is the video for today. Thanks for sticking around this long. If you enjoyed this one, click on the videos on the screen. It's going to take you to the channel and videos like this. It's going to help you get a little bit better with your finances and investing, and hopefully add a little bit of value to your life.